Midweek of the 28th of June 2023. Starting off with the DXY. So again, like, price has been in this huge weekly channel with these 1, 2, 3 sort of areas for a very long time now. As you can see, price has sold off, and we're kind of in this state of continuation on the weekly. Dropping down to the daily, you can kind of see that price is now starting to form this sort of structure. Doesn't have the greatest middle section, and this last leg isn't the best, but it would have been ideal if price had kind of moved back up more impulsively, but it's fine. It's doing what it's doing. What I'm seeing now is a potential for a ending sort of structure up to this area. Potentially doesn't have to reach that third touch and could just hit that override area of the larger structure. So if we drop down to the 4 hour, you can see, let me get these a bit straighter. Price has the potential to kind of gravitate back up towards these areas over here, which then would obviously give us the chance to look for the short, which on euro dollar would then, you'd flip the buy. I think you'd be looking for the long. So that's kind of what I'm waiting for with the DXY at the moment. I'm not really looking for anything sort of short term in here, as there's no real value areas that price has kind of rejected from, so I won't really be looking for the long in this scenario. So for the DXY and mainly euro dollar, I won't be really looking at it until we get to like this area, potentially this area, and mainly this area. But obviously we'll see how price approaches, because obviously if price comes up structurally and creates this sort of 1, 2, 3 into this sort of area, and then we get the push down, then we kind of have the sign from the market, okay, that we've approached structure, we have the high, we've got the push, and we've got the flag. This is a valid entry to take, so you can take that position. So those are the only sort of plays that I'll be looking for on the DXY, or I guess euro dollar. But yeah, so moving on, starting with Aussie yen. So I'll go to the weekly. We can see that price, it recently, just close it down a bit. Price hit this little double top here and then sold off. So if we just drop to the daily for a second, so you can see that price kind of approached this with a 1, 2, 3 tick structure, and that aggressively sold off there. And then what did the price do after that? Well, it slowly has kind of scooped back around, more visible on the weekly. You can see this scoop in formation to retest this area for the double top. So if we then move this area, focusing on this on the daily, we can see that price has very impulsively been moving to the upside, and it's now in this kind of state of continuation to potentially move a little bit higher, tag this high for the same sort of momentum sell off to the downside, obviously the target being this low down here. So then if we drop to the 4 hour, you can see that price has kind of got this channel that's formed. Again, so this would have been the third touch, but it obviously failed to commit, and there was I was looking at the running channel in here for the short, which has in fact sort of played out in a way, because it has sold off a little bit. But ultimately, this price action doesn't really give me signs of moving to the downside. The larger this correction becomes, in comparison to this impulsive push up here, because this is quite large, it would not surprise me if this ended up moving to the upside. So if I drop to the 1 hour, I can see that obviously we had the 1, 2, 3 here, price didn't commit, but now we have sort of a more another 1, 2, 3 that's starting to form, and this kind of then just becomes its own sort of separate price action. and especially with this wick as well, it now becomes a little bit more likely that price is actually going to come down and at least fill this wick. If it does that, then I'd be looking for a potential long, but there'd be no sort of risk entry in this area. Ideally, I'd be waiting for price to kind of just correct its way down. You kind of get this like very corrective channel, and then you want to see that sentiment change. You want to see like a very impulsive, just a breakout, and then I'd be looking for like a 1 hour or a tight 15-minute flag to look for the long. So if you just weigh that up, risk reward style, I'd be looking for about 15 pip on the 15-minute chart. Obviously, that gives you enough room to manage it to break even here, because you just got 3 to 1 to there, and obviously where that trend line sort of comes in, you got almost 5.5, and then obviously the main high here being 10, obviously the next being 16, and obviously the target being the double top. So personally, I think this is actually looking quite nice, especially if price does move down correctively. So it's kind of showing that it's running out of steam, and it doesn't look like it's committing to the downside. If it had moved to the downside, it probably would have done so with this structure here, with the running channel from the 1, 2, 3 here, and you would have sold off. At the end of the day, though, we don't know. I don't know if price is gonna come off here and then reject all the way back up here, or whether we are just gonna through the night come through, and then the next thing you know, you've got a big 1, 2, 3 below all of this volume, and then obviously you could be looking for entries over here for the short. But ultimately, I will be waiting for this kind of descending corrective price action. You can kind of see it's more like a flat phase line break. You wouldn't take it as a phase line break in this situation, but obviously you wait for the push and the flag. So that's all I'm looking for on Aussie Yen. Aussie Kiwi, this was looking very nice this morning. Still on the high time frame, still looks very, very good. There is this possibility of this larger daily channel, but it also has this internal expanding channel. Now, price hasn't really rejected off any real significant area to cause the short here. It's caused price to sell off. It would have been a little bit nicer if it maybe gravitated a little bit higher just to tag this override of the larger structure, and then price sold off, but obviously it didn't. So with that, knowing that, and this near miss here, it's always in the back of my mind that this could just kind of correct. Next thing you know, you've got this sort of like more steeper 3-touch to kind of come up to fill this larger 3rd touch, and obviously then you'd also have the daily hook point. But obviously that's more of a longer term forecast, because we're looking at months in advance for that one. On the 4 hour, obviously now that price has impulsively dropped out and is trading below this low, which is the most important part. I'll be looking for the sort of larger corrections in this area. Price was looking very nice this morning, because it looked like it was creating this 1, 2, 3 to come back up, little push and flag, and you'd be in there with looking for the short. However, price hasn't done that, and it's kind of becoming a little bit messier now. It's kind of becoming one of those that's becoming a little bit harder to read because of this kind of corrective push down. Price could reject off multiple different areas. You've got this little hook point here, you've got this hook point here, so it's kind of just a waiting game to see what sort of structure price forms sort of in this area, to see if we can get in with a valid short position. So personally, won't be looking at Aussie Kiwi at the moment, because I think there are other pairs that are slightly better. Aussie dollar. Now this one is selling off with so much momentum. Keeping it super simple, price has just broken above all this volume here very impulsively, and then just all it's doing is got people caught on the wrong side of the market, and it's completely sold off. And obviously the target is down to this low, so we're kind of just playing this range. On the 4 hour, there isn't really much happening. Price has just, it's pushed down, it's created this correction, it's pushed down, it's created this correction, and it's continued to push down. The sequence itself is quite nice, but the structures that it's forming is, just aren't the best. Earlier last week, we were looking for the 1, 2, 3 here for the risk entry for the short. That would have been lovely, but obviously price sold off a little bit earlier. And then price here was also looking very nice, but ultimately didn't give us the structure that we wanted. However, now price is looking very good again. So you can see that you've kind of got this little sort of like hook point, more visible on the 15-minute, I would say, because it is that sharp pullback that you can see here. Not the greatest, because obviously ideally you wouldn't want this price action after it, but ultimately we can see that price has got this sort of little liquidity point, and ultimately I will be looking for either the larger flag here, something like so you can get in with the 3 touch, or mark on this as your sort of hook point area, and then I'd be looking for an internal flag, something of the sorts, so you get the 1, 2, 3 within there for the short with the risk entry. Now this one looks very nice, because obviously the momentum's in on the higher time frame. Sequentially it's playing out very nice. We can see that we've got impulse correction, impulse correction, impulse correction, and now it's just timing. It's just waiting to see if we can time that next impulse with the short, and obviously the target would be down here. So that one equally is looking quite nice. Pound Aussie, just remove this on the higher time frame. Pound Aussie is quite interesting now, because I wasn't really looking at this earlier today or yesterday, but I always had in the back of my mind that price had near missed kind of twice to this area, and now we've tapped into that area. It's looking very, very nice, and I kind of saw it as it's more visible on the 1 hour, sorry, the 4 hour, but I kind of saw this as price just creating these scooping formations that actually ended up being the expanding structure. So you kind of had this one, create the near miss, come back around to fill that near miss, tapping into the double top area. So then if you draw on the structure, price hasn't met it exactly yet, so there is the potential, especially given that 4 hour candle with the wick. It has a likelihood that it could easily kind of form something like this, come up, tag the 3rd touch, break the high, get people on the wrong side of the market. Everybody's going to want to be buying this because it's broken these most recent highs, and then ultimately it sells off, creates the flag, and off we go. So if then we drop down to the 1 hour, we can see that this is also a wick on the 1 hour. Not the largest wick. These sort of I don't really see these sort of wicks often getting filled, which is absolutely fine. But ultimately, I'm kind of seeing this more as like a push up, kind of like a push down, and then ultimately you will get kind of like this ending structure with that wick to form this 1, 2, 3, breaking that high, like I said, tagging that 3rd touch to the expanding. Wouldn't really be looking for a risk entry just because of how steep this structure is, and obviously you'd be timing a daily or a weekly high value area on the 1 hour of the 15 minutes. It just becomes a little bit silly. So personally, I'll just be waiting for that first bit of momentum to pop in, first 15-minute flag, and off we go. That's personally what I'll be looking for. Could it go earlier? Of course, definitely. Because obviously we have now tapped into that daily high. Price might just be consolidating a little bit first. We haven't really moved with any momentum. This is very, very corrective, but Had a cough. But we can see that if price then starts to form something of the sorts, and we move down and we move back up, and we create this sort of 3-touch flag tapping into this mini little hook point here, you can see the complete difference in the price action, right? If we got this, you can see this is structure, and you can see that this is descending corrective price action. So I will, if something like this did form, I wouldn't be against taking the risk entry here. I would prefer to opt in for the pushing the flag, but as Mark always says, I would be looking for this if on the 1 hour it was a solid and obvious rejection, and on the 15-minute it was potentially something like 2 high test candles, 2 rejection candles, just to give that extra confirmation. In terms of the stop loss, protecting this corrective area here kind of skews the risk reward, so you would kind of have to separate it and see it as sort of like 2 potential trades. So you'd probably want to get in here with about a 20 pip stop, because ultimately if it's not going to sell off from this 3rd touch with this, you know, very obvious 3-touch flag into this hook point, then it's more than likely going to move back up to break the high and tag the 3rd touch, the expanding. But that's what I'll be looking for on Pound Aussie. Pound Kiwi. Now, Pound Kiwi is kind of sat in the middle of nowhere, in my personal opinion. So we had this high that we have broken, and the next major high is up here. And price is kind of just sitting in between those 2 highs at the moment, so it's like kind of in no man's land. But at the same time, you could argue that there is a potential short on the cards, because we've had this this kind of scooping double top, but after that double top, we've kind of created this sort of like ascending channel. It's a little bit more clear on the 1 hour. It's not the greatest, and obviously it's not in the best area. And at the moment we've had the push down, but it does look like we're starting to pull back a little bit. But if price did then go on to form a very nice sort of middle section, or actually if we pushed up a little bit higher, then came back down, form that little middle section, you would see this as you've got your hook point, you've got your sort of structure. It's a bit of a subjective first touch, it's not the best, kind of playing that equal spacing on either side. A risk entry in this position, don't think it would be the greatest. You'd probably want to wait for a little push and potentially like a 5-minute flag that would allow you to get in with a little bit tighter, because then you'd be able to manage it. Because I think you'd want to manage this a little bit more aggressively, just because it is in the middle of sort of nowhere and the structure itself isn't the greatest. But at the end of the day, it's a valid trade to take, because price has moved up, it's created this high, we've come back, we've broken this high, had the huge wick which we can see there, filled this wick, and then just happened to create another wick, and then we've gone on to fill this wick. Now this could just be price grabbing the orders, and grabbing the orders a little bit higher as well, for the volume, and then we get the sell-off. So it'll be one that I'll be keeping an eye on, but it won't be one of my favorites. So moving on to dollar yen. Dollar yen is an interesting one, because at the moment it just seems to keep moving up. I've got the daily hook point on. That price is, as I said, broken through. At the moment it's just very, very corrective. You can see on the 4 hour, even on the daily, you can see how corrective it's becoming. The 4 hours very corrective, the 1 hour very, very corrective. This now has like 2 options, because obviously we are very, very far away. We are kind of in the middle of nowhere now. You know, this is a very, very far gap from the next major high. I'd probably argue the next major high is there, that daily hook point. And to that point, we've got so much room to go right. So if we are going to go from that point, then you'd be looking for a potential long. But as this is just super corrective, this entire bit of price action for weeks has been extremely corrective. I would be looking for a larger flag. So ideally I'd like to see something like price comes down, comes back up, comes back down, and you're kind of playing this, and you've got your 1, 2, 3 and like that. And I wouldn't be risk entry in this. I'd wait for the push and a little flag. That is the only sort of structural play that I will be looking for on dollar yen. The short I don't think will be on the cards this week if it happens, because personally I won't be looking for a short. So if price does just impulsively push down like this and then we get the flag, I wouldn't be against taking that, because it will be a clear and obvious sentiment change from all this corrective price action. But you know, if we just see like this little push down and then a little flag here, I won't be looking for that, because this could easily just be still part of this channel to just go a little bit higher. So for the short on this, it needs to be very obvious. The impulsive nature needs to come in, and it needs to show me that, you know, price is making a change, kind of similar to something like this here. It needs to show me that, obviously this didn't end up playing out, but it needs to show me an obvious change in the market behavior compared to this corrective cycle up. So nothing really for UJ as of yet. Euro yen, kind of the same as UJ. If we go to the weekly prices, you've got this high, we're trading well above it now. There is this sort of like weekly daily hook point, but not the best. And obviously the next high we are well pretty far from, and it's the price action is very similar to that of dollar yen. So yeah, I will only personally be sort of looking for a larger flag on this one. So yeah, if we form something like this, and you can see that it is obvious structure, and you've got your 1, 2, 3 to play it like that, it would only be like a tight flag on the 15-minute. So you'd want to get in something like that, because you want to be able to manage it to the edge of that structure, just in case this you know, did sort of this was sort of just part of this channel, and we know that these can sometimes just aggressively turn around. So ultimately that's all I'll be looking for on euro yen. Euro dollar, kind of what I said in the DXY. You can see price has got this ascending channel. We're kind of in that last leg now, moving up to this very obvious daily hook point. So it's going to be it'll be very nice in a couple of weeks if we reach that area, if we reach this area. So that's good. But ultimately, this is a little bit messy with the pullback. I won't be looking for any sort of buy in this scenario. Just even something like this, I think it wouldn't be my sort of position that I'd want to take. Maybe I'm wrong, I don't know yet, but it's personally I wouldn't be looking for that. I will only be looking at dollar yen if price is kind of just around these areas now. Pound yen, again, very similar to UJ and euro yen. We are in the middle of these value areas. Prices just continued to push up. On the daily, again, it's just momentum really. Again, a few odd pullbacks, but nothing much. It's just a momentum play to the upside. I won't really be looking for the short. So you could. I know you could see this as kind of like this sort of ascending channel of sorts, and obviously now we've broken out of that trend line, and if we drop to the 15-minute, you could say, oh well, you know, if price forms this, then I'll be looking for this. I wouldn't be completely against it, but I would definitely say it's a more high risk position, just because of where we are. I'd rather opt in for a long position on this one, if price sort of pulls back, and then we see price pull back down, and we get this descending channel kind of into this little low here. Again, it would just be a push and a flag. I wouldn't be looking for risk entries on this one. But yeah, if we did that, and obviously you get the push up and a little flag round here, maybe something more convincing like so, then, you know, I wouldn't be against taking a reduced risk entry on that, or even a potential risk entry within that flag if it's slightly larger. You know, you'd get in with about 15, 16 pips, and obviously to that trend line you'd be looking at 4 up to the high, yeah, 10%. So the risk reward is there, and that would obviously then play in with the momentum play and the high time frame as well. So that could be a nice play for either tomorrow or later in the week. Kiwi yen. High time frame Kiwi yen is probably my favorite out of all of the yen pairs, just because you can see that price is kind of sitting in this bit of volume. Price has got this double top sort of from the third touch, kind of like scooping round, so it's just sort of like an extension of the structure. And obviously we scooped around. Very, very nice daily close. If we close like this within the next hour, that is a really nice candle. And you can kind of see that it's more on the 1 hour that price did actually create structure up to this point. There was a possible risk entry in there the other day. Probably would have got in with about maybe like an 18 pip stop. And you'd now be running, yeah, about 6%. So there was that position the other day. In terms of what I'll be looking for now, so we know there's this little hook point here. So if we just remove this, because it's not necessary anymore, we know I'd be looking for price to potentially come back up to that area, and then you kind of get this 3-touch channel leading up to the hook point. That would be very, very nice. That is something I would look at, because one, we've had the momentum in, so there is a sentiment change from this corrective price action, which is very good. And also the daily is much better than the other pairs, the other yen pairs, as we have this double top that we have scooped to. So very, very nice price action on the 4 hour, very like strong, strong 4 hour candles. And obviously if the daily closes like this, very, very nice. So yeah, that is potentially going to be a very nice play for potentially tomorrow or into Friday. That would be a lovely play. Obviously, in case if we drop down to 50-minute again, see if there is anything else. So obviously we know price may not and doesn't have to come back to this area. So you can see that there's this another hook point here. So I would kind of see this if we got an internal here. So if we got something like so, make it a bit more clear. If we got something like that, and then you get your internal 1, 2, 3 here, I'd kind of be seeing this as a sort of 2-touch flag with an internal. And obviously all we've done is just then filled this wicked near miss. So that I also wouldn't be against taking the risk entry, because I think the gap from here to here is significant enough for you to take the risk entry. So if I just weigh that up, yeah, you'd be easily be getting in that with a 10 pip start, and obviously to the low of the structure, yeah, you're looking at about 3.5%. So yeah, like your 1% mark is around here, and obviously you'd be looking to move to break even around this area if we started to see rejections. So that's another one that's looking quite nice. Kiwi dollar, I'm not really looking at Kiwi dollar anymore. I was on the high time frame, I kind of had this as like creating this larger descending flag. It broken below, so if I just flip my chart, it had broken below the override of the structure here, and then obviously started to impulsively push down, and that's when I was looking for this flag. So if I just go down to the 1 hour, a bit more clear, that's when I was looking for this 1 hour flag, or 1 hour ascending channel, and I was looking at this potential. I think I might have had an order set on this one, but obviously it didn't push up, and so I took my order off and it ended up pushing down, but obviously ultimately it didn't really play out. So if I just flip my chart back, and now price is it's impulsively dropped out, and yeah, it's just not something that I'm going to be looking at the moment, because I think there are much better pairs on watch. Dollar CAD on the daily is looking very, very nice, because obviously this is just huge volume built up, and price has broken the low. We're kind of trading in the low at the moment, which isn't the best, but ultimately probably won't be ready this week. We've had this momentum for most of today. You can see it on the daily, but I will be looking to see if price kind of pushes back down, comes back up, and then you get this sort of larger 1, 2, 3. That is when I would be looking for the short. There's a possibility that there could be one now. So we've got this. We had this wick here. What has price done? It's just come up. It's filled that wick, and obviously now it's started to project. 15-minute. You could argue that you've got your impulse and flag, but to me it just looks premature. It just looks a little bit early. I think if you get involved in something like this, you're kind of rushing it a little bit, and there's a little bit of FOMO that price is just going to drop out. But again, with the momentum, and obviously the momentum being back above the low, and on top of that, you do have this descending channel that has completed at that third touch. If price does go on to break above this little hook point sort of area here, I will be looking for the long. I think it then favors for the long, not having a bias to that long, but I think with that daily channel, you can kind of see that it's got a very nice middle section to it as well. Last leg was quite had a decent amount of momentum, kind of creating that sort of A, B, C sort of move, not so much. But on top of that, if you go down to the 1 hour, you can see that price did also end with an ending structure. It moved a little bit earlier. So yeah, I'll be looking for price to kind of break above this area and then look for that 3 touch. This actually looks really nice for the long. But ultimately, if price pushes down, I won't be looking for well, then again, actually, I think I would. If price does push down after this, so if I just remove all this again, make it a little bit more clear. Put that back on. If price does end up sort of moving down, and then you get more momentum and a more obvious flag, that's when I'll be looking for the short, because you'd easily be able to manage it to the low, so you wouldn't have to worry about the management. And then obviously this could just be the one to go, because you could argue that you do have, this is just more of like a maybe a breakout of this expanding. Again, obviously very, very subjective first touch, but you could just see that as that, and obviously we've had this momentum here. Price pushes down, flags, we get the push down and kind of just build equal this momentum, this like size correction here, and obviously yes, then I would be looking for the short. Other than that, I think that is all the pairs. So my favorites for the rest of the week: Aussie yen is looking very nice, Aussie Kiwi not so much, Aussie dollar looking good, pound Aussie, we'll see how it goes, pound Kiwi, again, one of those ones we'll see how it goes. So if I just mark these green, actually. The favourites. Dollar yen, not so much. Euro yen, not so much. Euro dollar, no. Pound Kiwi. No, sorry, pound yen, no. Kiwi yen, yes. Looking very nice. Kiwi dollar, no. And dollar CAD. I'll put that on watch as well. That's it. Thank you.